Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public hearing and general meeting of the Charter Review Committee. There was a copy of the agenda. If you need one, it's pretty simple. I can give another one on the table there. This is Tuesday, June 20th at the Wacoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall. Part of the agenda tonight includes a public hearing, which is why we assume many of you, if not most of you, are here. And we'll get to that shortly. We begin most meetings, as all meetings begin, with a Pledge of Allegiance, if you're able to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I invite you to observe a moment of silence for any purpose that you deem appropriate. And I might make mention of the recent passing over the weekend of Ray Jack, our sewer master, and extend condolences to his family and friends on behalf of the town. Thank you. My name is John Miller. I'm the town moderator, as you may know, and the chair of this Charter Review Committee. Other members of the committee, 9 of us, all here tonight, include Vice Chair David Whedon, Mary Wagan from the Planning Board, Kathy Lewis, Chair of the School Committee, Darlene Furbish from the Finance Committee, Greg McKelvey from the Finance Committee, Carol Sherman from the Select Board, Don Myers from the School Committee, and Town Manager Rodney Collins. I believe, Mr. Secretary, you have a copy of the public hearing notice. If you could read that for us, it will convene the public hearing.
Pursuant to Article 7, Section 7-7A of the Charter of the Town of Mashpee, the Charter Review Committee will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, at 6:30 p.m. in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road, North, Mashpee, Massachusetts. The purpose of said public hearing is to listen to and entertain any comments and concerns from the public regarding the Town of Mashpee Charter. Copies of the town charter are available at the clerk's office. Comments may be emailed to charterreview@mashpeema.gov prior to the meeting. Per order of the Mashpee Charter Review Committee, John Miller, Chair, David Whedon, Vice Chair, Don Myers, Clerk, Rodney Collins, Darlene Furbish, Catherine Lewis, Gregory McKelvey, Carol Sherman, and Mary Wiggins. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to convene the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is so convened. So let me make a few preliminary comments, and then we'll get to it. There's no sign-up clipboard or sheet if you were looking for it, because anybody that wants to speak will find out who you are when you do. And I think we'll be able to accommodate everyone tonight, since 400 people did not show up, which is kind of unfortunate. The charter, as you may know, is the foundational document for those towns that have them in Massachusetts, including Mashpee. It defines the organization, the powers, the functions, the essential procedures for our local government, as well as the rights of citizens. It outlines everything from the town's name to town elections to the process for making rules, procedures, and the key criteria for how our town and government operates. Mashpee's charter, as many of you may know, was first created in 2004 when it was adopted. It was reviewed and updated in 2013/14 and is now being reviewed again, a process that is required every 10 years. The current charter, which hopefully you have seen, is comprised of 8 sections. We, the committee, are reviewing them in sequence, often with discussion, but do not intend to move forward with specific conclusions, changes, or additions until the review process is completed, which would be late summer or early fall. Eventually, our proposed thinking will be available for one or more subsequent public hearings. While the timetable is not prescribed, our current intent is to bring our report and recommendations to voters at the 2024 Spring Town Meeting. Our current review has brought us through Section 3, and we will pick up with Section 4, time permitting, after this hearing tonight. What we're seeking tonight are your comments and suggestions pertaining to the existing charter. We presume that you're familiar with the portions of the charter dealing with your topic of interest. If the current charter does not address what's on your mind tonight or at a later date, we welcome knowing what provisions you'd like to propose. What we are not seeking tonight are comments about the cost of beach stickers, road construction and detours, or whether or not there should be a Trader Joe's in Mashpee. We had our first meeting on May 30th, been meeting weekly since then, and we will resume in July with a reduced schedule during the summer. Tonight's hearing is a requirement of the process. There will be others. All of our regular meetings are also open to the public, and participation is welcomed and encouraged, either in person or by email to charterreview@mashpeema.gov at any time. If you wish to speak tonight, you'll be recognized when you step up to the table and the microphone and state your name and address and the section of the charter of concern to you, unless you have more general comments. We ask you to be, just like a town meeting, concise and make your point. Members of the committee may respond with questions to gain clarity, though our primary objective tonight is to learn what's on your mind and simply listen. Tonight's forum is not intended as a place to debate the merits of various ideas and potential charter provisions. That will come at a later date. Any questions so far?
Can people call in?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is televised with thanks to Mashpee TV Live, and people may call in. Thank you, Mary. We're not having a Zoom session, as you probably concluded now, but the number to call if you wish to participate is 508-539-1449. I'll repeat that periodically. 508-539-1449. So, whoever would like to go first, be our guest. Yes, sir. The person with the most courage speaks first.
Uh-oh. Well, I'll need that courage. Not even going in for knee surgery. So,
Oh, gosh.
my name is Richard Klein, 205 Ashers Path West. I'd like to address on your Article 3, your executive branch. I'd like you to consider to bring it to a two-term limit for all elected officials.
You're welcome to elaborate a little, if you like.
Well,
Article
a lot of people have been on the boards 6, 8, 9, 10, 15 years, and not very much has been accomplished on a lot of the boards. And I think if we turn the boards over a little more frequently, putting a little younger blood into the boards, I think it will start happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask a question?
You may.
Richard, can I ask a question?
Yes.
The two terms, would they be two consecutive terms or two terms period for the person's lifetime?
No, 2 consecutive terms.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
My name is Richard Weiner, 13 Sea Spray. Avenue. I'd like to make some major recommendations and changes to, on page 21, section 5.7, there's a planning and construction and building facilities group of people that is reasonably new to the town. The function of this group seems to be rather vague to me, and it overlaps several other people in the town. Right now, that committee, the Planning and Construction and Building Committee, is responsible for monitoring and physical conditions of all municipal buildings and other facilities, and make recommendations, and fills out a written report. Also, earlier in the charter, the capital improvement program, the town manager submits a capital improvement plan as well to the town and to the Finance Committee. There's also a public building and maintenance group, which is really the DPW. And these three groups really overlap very badly. I mean, who's in charge of making major construction work? If the town needs a major job to be done, who gets it? Right now, it's a DPW. Everything funnels into them one way or the other, and they handle it. And I think that there should be, if there's going to be a planning and construction committee, and it's referred to in the charter as a permanent building committee. And by that, it usually means that no matter which projects get done, this always funnels into this permanent building committee. To me, that committee really is responsible for the construction of major projects that come in the town. Let's take, for example, just a hypothetical. Supposing the roof on this building, town hall, starts to leak very badly. Who gets to fix it? Who physically, after the town manager and the finance committee decide that we've got to get the money together, once the money's gotten together to fix the roof on this building, who's in charge? Would this be this planning committee? They don't seem to have the rights to actually place contracts and do award the work to be done. It's the DPW. The DPW is full of regular tasks that it normally has to do, the streets, the sewers, the plowing, the mowing, and all the rest of the stuff. And loading them up with a task to fix the roof on this town hall is, I think, out of their scope. And really, in order to do a construction job, even a major construction job, you need a whole process to be done. Things that need to be done when you want to do a major project. If you want to build a school, if you want to build a new town hall, you want to increase the library, whatever it is that the town wants to do. You need to get together and figure out where the money's going to come from. That's out of the scope, and that's usually something that's be done. After that, you need to get to the point where you're going to advertise a job and get an architect to come in and actually do a set of plans and specifications for the job. And after that's done, then usually you go out to a bidding process and you get 3 or 4 at least low bids that have to come in and be approved and take a look at. This planning committee should be a permanent building committee who are the people that we're going to review the actual contracts that come in. The signing of the contract is done by the town treasurer. There's no question about that, where the money's going to come from. After that is done, you award the contract after you get an architect.
Mr. Weiner, if I could interrupt a bit, let's try not to get too far into the weeds on what the procedure might be.
Okay.
You said you had other parts of the warrant,
I think what
you
needs to
wanted
be
to
done,
address.
is you need to specify that some amount of money, arbitrarily, I picked a number like $100,000. Any job that comes into the town of $100,000 or more should go to this planning or permanent building committee, and not to the DPW, which is what it goes to now. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought you had other sections you wanted to comment on.
No, just,
Okay. I think we get your drift. Thank you. We good? Next.
I just had-
Yes,
Yeah,
Don.
I have a couple questions for him.
Yeah, I had a couple, one question for you.
Why don't you come on back?
I presume the answer is no, but I want to hear it from you. You're okay with the makeup of the committee? You're
Yes,
just,
7 people is a good number.
but the constituency of who is on that committee, you're okay with that?
I don't know who the individuals are.
No, the representative groups, you're okay with that?
Representative, yeah, they should be, being appointed by town manager is not a problem.
Right.
If that's what is that what you're referring to? How those members get appointed?
As outlined, I think Don's referring to the makeup of the committee. It's, what is it? It's
Yeah,
6 shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
2, and then, you know,
Yeah, the selection process is fine, okay. But usually they pick, in the towns that I'm used to, they usually pick people who are retired architects or people in construction business, engineering kind of people, or people who have done some kind of construction work in their careers, not just paper pushers.
Okay, and the 7th person is appointed by the school committee, you're okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I
The
just wanted,
appointing process is not the issue. The issue is control. And having another group like this planning group is just another group that's going to make another report at the end of the year to the town meeting. It's futile.
that's why I said I thought the answer was no, but I just wanted to confirm that you did not want to change, you're not suggesting to change
The makeup, no.
Okay.
No. It's where the contracts are going to get awarded and how the awarding process is done.
Okay, I think Rodney had a question.
He has a question.
Yes, I guess my question is, you mentioned the 100,000 threshold. Should that be for new construction as well as a major renovation?
Yes, new construction amendment. The reason I picked a number out of the sky is because smaller jobs, I mean, if a sewer overflows or something, the DPW is going to take care of that. And there's no point of trying to, nickel and dime this. But if you don't like 100,000, maybe it's 200,000 is the right answer. But jobs of some significance that need to have an architect and contractors come in and do that. And you need a clerk of the works. You need people that are going to monitor the job, monitor the workload that's going to be done, and not just give it to the DPW and hope for the best. Because
So-
they're overloaded right now.
So my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want another set of eyes on a established figure, which would be 100,000.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
J. Marie Stevenson, 135 Sampson's Mill Road, and also the chair of the Mashpee Inclusion and Diversity Committee. I'm going to assume that all the references to the Board of Selectmen will be changed to the Select Board, right? Okay, good. Just want to throw that in. We did
That we're
work
in
to get
agreement
that.
on, so
Yeah,
yes.
thank you. Okay. I think I would like to see, I noticed even at this meeting, there wasn't a land acknowledgement at the beginning of this meeting. I would like to see a land acknowledgement included in the beginning or the beginning of the charter and a recognition in some way of the unique history that Mashpee has in terms of the Wampanoag tribal existence. So I'd like to see something in that vein included, maybe in a preamble or the introduction to the charter. And I wanted to bring up something, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but we have a committee that is a volunteer committee and under the policies of the select board. And the charge that we have is something that needs, to be quite honest, money. And there is, I noticed that, I'm told that a volunteer committee at this point does not have a budget per se, that there are other ways in which to try to fund it, but it's not clearly stated. And I noticed, for example, in one of the, that like say the Finance Committee was, in somewhere in the charter, I saw like a sum of money that was afforded to the Finance Committee, which is, as far as I know, a volunteer committee. So I would like to see the Select Board have the, have the power, if that's the word, or can make the decision that certain volunteer committees may need operating expenses. I know that adds a lot to your budget and whatever, and I would be very pleased, actually, if it was listed, Mashpee Inclusion and Diversity Committee, so that townspeople were actually aware that this committee existed, because everything that we do is pretty much needing funding. And if a committee like ours is dependent on writing grants, which is something you're asking volunteer people to do. There's work involved, and there's no real, we don't have the comfort of knowing that amount of money is going to be afforded to us. We're in competition. So I'd just like to see that something addressed in that and a particular volunteer committee may be afforded an operating budget. Thank you.
I know
Sorry.
Mr. Collins
I
would
thought
have
I'd
a
get away
comment
with
here.
that, but, there you go.
There's a significant issue with that, and that
Yeah.
is the Munis system that all of our processing goes through. We've got to have limited access to Munis. That's why any committee that needs money, we're not saying that they can't receive it
Yeah.
after the budget process is over. What we're saying is it needs to be funneled through a department head. Like in your case,
Yeah.
it would be Human Services.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
So we're not saying you can't have it, as long as it goes through the process. We're
Yes.
just saying it's got to be funneled through Gail Wilson. That's all.
Okay.
And can I just add, you mentioned the Finance Committee and its funds.
Yeah.
That's almost like a reserve fund for emergencies or something unexpected. For example, Richard's example, the roof leaking, caving
Right.
in.
And that's by statute, I believe.
Right.
I thought it was actually to fund a screening process, so that's what I looked at. Anyway, that was written up there somewhere. That was providing a sum for a screening committee. So I didn't see that as an
Oh, yeah, that's for
emergency
that.
kind of thing. It was just listed in the charter
Right.
as I was reading through it. Yeah.
It's like $1,500.
Yeah, that's what kind of alerted me, okay.
Yeah, so
that-
if I could ask, Mr. Chairman, a question?
Yes.
So you're looking for a line item in...
Yeah, I guess I would.
In the budget,
Yeah,
that's voted on at town meeting?
why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have an idea of a number, just out of curiosity? How much that might be?
It would depend on, the extent to which, it would kind of reflect, like, we could do more than we do now if we had a funding source to do that. And it wouldn't be a huge amount of money, but, depending on, we would be able to justify, how we would spend it. For example, the Race Amity Day that we do is actually more than what a grant has afforded us, and so we look at other sources, and we actually have groups of people that actually add money to the budget in order. For example, we had the Baha'i group in the community that funded like $300 for a particular, group that was performing, or materials and things for. So it really is, how much we can actually do with what we have, and. But I guess specifically to our committee is our charge is to provide, activities and experiences for the community to encourage inclusion, diversity. So that's our charge, and I'm not saying that there might be other committees that also may have a reason to do that, but it's very specific in the work that we do.
So just
Yeah.
for my curiosity,
Yeah.
the current funding that you require
Yeah.
comes from where?
Well, right now, we had a limited amount of money through the Human Services Committee, and then this year, we raised that amount of money. So specifically, we went from 300, we went to 500, and now I think this year we will have 2,000, which is really helpful.
Okay, so
Really
and
helpful.
then are you suggesting
Yeah.
that all committees that feel the need to have some operating capital
Mm-hmm. Yes.
have this option available to them?
Yes,
Or are you
and
just speaking on
appeal,
behalf of your?
appeal, if that's the word, or present something to the select board justifying, the money that they would need
Okay.
and how it would be used, very specifically. It also, I don't know if, I guess the other thing, and I don't know if it works in here, but when we had the local planning committees, there was some mention of somebody having a grant writer as well, somebody to write grants, which kind of would kind of be helpful too, because we don't. In other words, we have volunteer people that, like myself, that has to write the grants,
We got it.
Hello. And the other thing that's important is we have a coalition now of a lot of different committees throughout the Cape and the South Shore, all that working with diversity. A number of them are not tied to the town. When we're tied to the town, we're not allowed to have fundraising capabilities. Whereas if it's a private group or an ad hoc committee in a town, they can do, not that I want to have bake sales, trust me,
Okay.
Yeah,
We
but
get
you know
your
what I'm saying.
point, and I imagine
Yeah, you get the point.
We'll revisit this again
Thank
later,
you.
too.
The only other thing I would point out, Mr. Chair, is obviously, if it's any town funds, we've got to strictly adhere to the procurement laws.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
the way it is.
yeah. Right.
Don?
So, one of the adjoining towns has a individual in a town position that basically represents the functions that your committee is doing. Are you suggesting keeping it at a committee level or potentially bringing it into the town as a formal position and function?
You're saying that you have towns that have a diversity officer or whatever. We haven't really discussed that. I'm not sure if you wanted my opinion about that. I think we have a very small town, and I think that it can be addressed. I don't know if you need a formal position, but that would be something that, that the board might consider. It's not something that I think that the committee has been able to, provide the services that are needed with, what we have. But I would like to address your comment too, Mr. Collins, and that is, it's really, really important to understand that you have, and there are that is true in terms of, what are the procedures that need to be followed. You're asking volunteer people who have not necessarily dealt with the financial aspects of and there needs to be at the very least, and, we're getting a lot
I
of
think
good
we
guidance.
fully understand your concerns, so
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm just
Could
responding.
I just ask for a show of hands of how many people sitting here wish to speak before the night is over? Okay, that'll help me just divvy up my tolerance for how much detail we go into on any of these topics, so it's good to know. Thank you. Let me remind anybody that's watching and would like to participate that you may do so by phone. The number is 508-539-1449. And my preference would be to have people that have not yet spoken speak next, but if you have something
this is-
worthy of our attention, which I'm sure you do, go ahead as long as you're seated.
This is a different section. This is your Section 1-6, which is intergovernmental relations. Nothing in this particular section mentions anything regarding our relationship with the Wampanoag tribe. And I think adding some sort of preamble regarding the Wampanoags' unique history in our town and enable them to participate in decisions.
That was just mentioned by the previous speaker, actually. Point well taken.
No, she did land recognition.
All right, well then,
This is governmental.
put your spin on it then, go right ahead.
Well, land recognition isn't governmental regulations.
Go ahead.
I just said what I said.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Who's next? I didn't mean to cut you off, but just my takeaway from the previous comment was, much as the school committee and other government bodies do, to have a summary statement that precedes important documents and important meetings, recognize the history of the town in all of its forms. Some of it's land, some of it is human capital, a lot of different dimensions to it. So if I misinterpreted the generality that was intended, I apologize. Next.
Lynn Barbie, 73 Surf Drive. I will first say I had many years working as an editor, so I was reading every word. And the first thing that came to my mind was the use of the word voters. It's very vague. It doesn't say people who own land, people who are registered to vote. There's different sayings throughout. I mean, it starts at the very beginning, but it goes through in many different sections. In some places it says taxpayers. Well, taxpayers aren't the same as people who are registered to vote. Taxpayers could be anybody who owns a shop. They pay taxes in the town. So I think it's really important in a document like this to be very clear and specific when we're talking about voters, to define it more carefully. There is a section that says voters, but I think that it deserves more detail to be clear that when people are, for example, at town meeting, there is a section that says that people who are not registered to vote can speak, which I think is fine. There has to be a way of regulating that because, as you know, but we need to be clear throughout the document when we want to talk about who is eligible, who makes the decisions in the town. And is it if you own property, or if you live here, or if you are registered to vote here? So I would just point that out.
May I ask a question on that point, please?
Yes.
So in the definition section, it does define voters as registered voters. You're looking for the definition section to be more clearly defined, or are you looking for the reference throughout the entire charter?
Well, I think that the definition section should be very specifically
It says registered.
defined.
So right now, it
Yes.
currently says registered voters.
Registered.
Voters means registered voters of the town of Mashpee.
Registered voters. Yeah,
So you
yes.
would like that,
So I think that needs to be clear
so that needs to be
throughout.
expanded upon.
Yes, expanded upon, and make sure that throughout, wherever we're talking about participation, that we refer back to that definition about who is, and what does it take to be a registered voter? You have to live here, right? Right? You have to have a residence here, or be,
Well, to
you have to have
register, yeah,
you have to have an address.
You have to be registered. and
Yeah, you have to be a resident, right. So the other, one of the other issues I had, don't take it personally, anybody. Someone told me offhand when I was talking about this, is like, oh, the charter got changed, and I went and looked it up in 2004. It turned out that the finance committee that had been elected was now appointed. And it seems a little odd to me that the people who make the decisions for the library are accountable to the voters and are elected, which I think is fine, but that the people who are on the finance committee are not directly accountable to the voters. I know that there are important decisions that the Finance Committee makes. I know, I read the article in the Cape Cod Times, they're talking about the Finance Committee is basically legislative. But I know from going to town meetings that the Finance Committee makes decisions about important things that come up at town meeting, about articles. And it seems to me that I'd like somebody to explain to me why the decision was made that the Finance Committee would no longer be elected. I gather there might have been some concern about, something about, when Ed Larkins quoted in here saying, you know, now people can be free to participate and they don't have to worry about getting elected. But I think it's a very important position. And I think it's equally important to the library, you know, the folks who run the library, and that I believe that we should return to having the Finance Committee elected. So.
Thank you.
Or-
Any
or-
questions?
or-
Or did you have?
Or appointed by the Select Board, which is a broader representative body. I'm saying, nobody take this personally. It's not a question of anybody who's sitting in this room today. But I do believe that that when you have the school board and the Select Board and the Planning Board, I think the Finance Committee should be elected. And that's my comments for now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments from here?
Are
From the
you,
committee.
do you have any thoughts in regard to changes to the powers of the Finance Committee beyond what they currently exist in the charter?
Well, not off the top of my head, but I will think about that and come to the next meeting. Because I take this very seriously. I've written lots of contracts in my life doing union work, and I think that language is important, and I think when we're defining the powers of the people who we do elect or appoint, we have to be very considerate about it. So I'm working hard on this. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Lynn. Mr. Collins.
I was not here in 2004, but from what I understand, I think, and I could be wrong about this, that change was made because it is the manager's budget that goes to town meeting, and obviously whoever the manager is, I think it would be wise to listen to the select board in terms of what they want. But beyond that, I think you might find that the Finance Committee, I can't explain why it went from elected to appointed, but I think they wanted an independent eye of the overall budget that was free from the select board and the manager, I believe.
So they could be elected. As
I'm
opposed
not
to
getting
appointed.
into why they went from elected to appointed. I have no idea. But from what I understand, if
Right.
it's correct, and I would ask anybody that was here during that time period, that it was intended to be an independent review. Because obviously, the manager, whoever he or she is going to listen to the select board, but at the same time, the Finance Committee could draw their own opinion as to what the budget should or shouldn't be.
I think that's fine.
I can add my
You
recollection.
were here.
I was around. My recollection was it really came down to the fact that getting qualified individuals to serve on that committee, most did not want to have to go through the election process, and they felt collectively that making it an appointed position versus having to run for it, they would be able to get more qualified individuals. That was my understanding from back then.
Except that when the ad was posted for Finance Committee, they said there was no qualifications needed. I mean, I remember reading that in the paper. So, I mean, to me, we want qualified people. We certainly do. And I understand that. It's a,
I did not see that ad, so I
Yeah,
would be
as
surprised.
I said earlier, the purpose of tonight is not to debate the merits of doing it one way or the other,
Right.
but your comment is well taken and on the record. We will be getting to that topic, I'm sure, and would welcome your return.
And I'll be back the next time. Thank you.
It's also useful to have some knowledge statewide of how many finance committees are elected versus appointed and by whom, if it's appointed. It's not always.
Correct.
It's not always the moderator, nor the select board, so. Next speaker.
Hi, Yvonne Courtney, Prestwick Lane, Mashpee. I think my major point is I'd like to see more people in the town participate in the government. I see that the same people are serving on involvement in town. I think more and more people moving into town, and I like to draw on more resources. So, for example, I would also like to see committees not being appointed, but I'd like to see more elected. And I'm agreeing with Lynn, the fact that the Finance Committee should be elected. I think the people they're representing the taxpayers, and I'd like to see their input, who's on it. I'm sure when people are running, they can list their qualifications, and there are enough intelligent people in this town that can make a good decision on voting. Also, I think you get more diversity if you have more people voting and making the selection. They have to participate. If you're just having people appointed to committees, then it's only a certain group is going to be involved. I also think that some of these committees should be elected because they're enforcing town laws or town ordinances, and I would like to see more diversity, not special interest people being involved in these committees. I also think that if you are a town employee, a paid town employee, and I was one at one time, I don't think that you should be on some of these committees, like Select Board, Planning Board, and so on. I think there is definitely a conflict of interest involved, and I don't think a town employee should be on a committee. I also like to see, is there any limit on how many committees you can be on? Because you have the same people participating. But if you have more elected boards, maybe we can have a greater pool from different parts of the town. I also think that if you're on a committee, you should not be a chairperson of more than one committee. I'd like to see also, that was mentioned earlier, I'd love to see more young people serving on committees. And I would agree, we need to reach out. And I think one way to reach out is if you have an election rather than just an appointment. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yvonne,
A question? Yep.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? So, should all committees be elected?
I think the ones that are involved, like if it involves zoning, if it involves the health committee, they're making important decisions. And I'd like to see a diversity of people being involved. And I'd like the people in the town to know who's on, make that process more open.
How would you
And the
solve?
finance committee, too, I agree,
Right.
should be elected.
Well, thank you very much.
Did you want to ask me something?
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
What committees are you on?
I'm not, I'm on the Board of Registrars.
So she's involved in elections, so she's confident that more people will get involved. That's important to know, from your point of view. You're a registrar, and you think more people will get involved if there's more elections going on.
Yeah, I'd like to see more people, the same people
interesting.
coming out and participating, yes.
good to see you, Yvonne.
Good.
My question is, are you focused primarily on regulatory boards, or are you focused on all advisory boards or committees?
I think the regulatory boards, yeah.
Okay, because sometimes, despite advertising and getting it on the website and so on and so forth, we cannot get volunteers for some of these committees.
I know, but if you have the names on the ballot, people, I think, would be, you're putting them in a position, I think you can get more people out, yeah.
I'm glad you're optimistic, because sometimes I've seen nobody on the ballot.
I think it's important, yeah, I think it's important.
In terms of town employees, personally, I agree with you. However, I would remind you that that issue was brought up at a town meeting. I remember the former planner speaking out against it very emphatically, and that article was defeated.
Yeah.
It was a petitioned article, if I remember correctly.
Right, yeah. I think, basically, as I said, I was a town employee of Falmouth, so I was a teacher. And I never served on, well, I didn't live in Falmouth, but say if I lived in Falmouth, I would not serve. I think it definitely is a conflict of interest if you're being paid by the town, especially certain positions, I don't want to name them, policemen or firemen or whatever. I mean, they're paid well. I think that they have certain interests. And again, I would like to see a broader composition in the town, not special interests on various committees. I don't want to repeat, but I agree with the preamble to the Wampanoag tribe. I would like to support that also.
Mary, did you have something else?
Kathy, do you have a question?
Okay.
I did, Mr. Chairman, I did. I just was wondering, I've asked Rodney and I have been studying those definitions like Lynn brought up, and
I do have your definition.
Yes! So one thing that's been driving me crazy, what's a town officer, what's not a town officer, and I've started to read charters from other towns. And there is, other towns use that term, town officer, in different ways. And I think what some towns have done is limited what town officers can do within the town because of this conflict of interest thing, i.e. they can't be on a committee. And I'm very curious to see how other towns deal with this. At that town meeting where there was a citizen's petition from the Ron Hawks, and it was, it was a citizen's petition to ban all town staff from being on, I think it was elected. And I remember during that conversation, there was a teacher that was a resident and got up and said, I work for the town, I live in the town, I want to be involved in town boards and committees. But then she said, but I would never run for school committee. But that was her own personal decision. There's nothing preventing somebody who gets paid by the school to run for the school committee. Oh, there is, okay, all right, good. So I think that if that's something you can bring to us on how that's dealt with, that would be good for me.
And I happen to agree with that. The only problem is I want to be consistent, and if it is not a rule or provision that prohibiting it, I can't say no.
Right.
So there's a difference. If we were to establish one, then I would be in favor of it, except for the fact that I wouldn't want to go against the will of the people who spoke, in my view, when that petition article came forward. But maybe we could revisit it. But anyway, just for the record, Mr. Chair, the term town officer as defined in section 1-7 of the charter has historically been construed to include all elected and appointed members of town boards, commissions, or committees established or authorized by statute, charter, or by law, elected individual office holders such as the town clerk, and appointed department heads, as departments are established within the town's administrative organizational structure from time to time. So that's where the definition ends. It does not include assistant department heads unless that assistant department head was serving or acting in the capacity as a department head due to the absence, disability, or other inability of the duly appointed department head to act on the town's behalf. And that's from town council.
And will we get a copy of that? Because you read that really quickly. I only got like 2 words
I will be
down.
more than happy to provide you with a copy of that.
We'll
Thank
do
you,
that in the
sir.
regular session.
So it does
thank you.
include department heads. That's, okay,
It's
good.
basically a department head or any of the people that I
Thank
quickly
you.
went through.
Who would
That's
like
gonna
to
help.
join us next? Ms. Kay.
Mrs. She's got this.
Good evening. I understand the Charter Commission is discussing the position of town clerk, elected versus appointed. I have a statement I'd like to read. However, I want to make it very clear that we are not talking about any one person in this room or in town government today. We are talking about positions, committees, and people. We are not talking about my relationship with the town manager, Rodney, okay? We're in Mannequin, Massachusetts, no faces. So I consider my rapport with everybody to be a good one. And I think that has a lot to do with being an elected official. I work for the town of Mashpee. I don't work 9 to 5. I work weekends. I work nights. Somebody's trying to drive in from Boston. They need to get something. I sit here and I wait. I open the door to my house on weekends. If somebody's coming in for from a late flight the night before and has to file their wedding intentions, they come to me, and I work for them. And I'm a real proponent for this position remaining elected. And with that, I'd like to read this statement. I said most of it, though, I got to tell you. I am very proud of this position that I hold. As an elected town clerk, it is one that the town of Mashpee should retain. The elected town clerk is directly accountable to the people of Mashpee and thus serves at the will of the residents, not at the discretion of a 5-person select board or town manager. Since the position deals with all things political, it is best that the position is not under anyone's thumb of appointment. This is especially important during town elections when the independence of the town clerk and his or her staff is vital. If the position is appointed by the electorate, let me try that again. The elected town clerk is appointed by the electorate of several thousand voters as opposed to the appointment made by only 5 individuals or a town manager. Elected town clerks are more service-oriented. I did tell you this one already. If you change the position to appointed, you may have a town clerk that does not live in this town, all right? I offer my services as the town clerk, and I live here in town, and I think that's where the position should be. I've heard many town clerks, I go to these conferences, and I've heard town clerks talk about other town clerks who have stood up as an appointed official to, because the town manager or the select board tried to make them do things that they didn't necessarily believe was appropriate or, I can't say illegal. They stood up to them, and they were told if they stand up and go against them, their position could be taken away from them, and they stood up anyway, and they lost their jobs. Town clerks should avoid cronyism, politics of being appointed. The elected town clerk has a sensitive role in the administration of elections and town meetings that would be ill-served by being beholden to those who are seeking re-election. And finally, there is no valid reason to take this responsibility and right away from the residents of Mashpee. The residents' power should never, ever be taken out of the hands of the many to be placed into the hands of a few. Thank you. Any questions? I'm ready.
I can tell you, Deb, that we did touch on this topic as part of going through the sequence of the first 3 sections. and it uniquely spawned more discussion than any other topic in the charter so far, not surprisingly. To be continued. But my question is, I'm curious, you belong to the County Clerks Association, I assume?
All the way up through New England and international.
So in Barnstable County, if you know offhand, I'd be curious how many clerks are appointed versus elected, and how you would characterize the demeanor of the discussions that probably happen among your peers about the pros and cons of either way, especially on the Cape.
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many are appointed versus elected. There are a lot of town clerks who are willing to go appointed so that they don't have to stand up at town meeting and fight for a pay raise. And I don't think you want that person to be in the position if they're not willing to fight for what's right.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Collins.
Good to see you, Deb.
Nice to see you too, Rod.
So I don't think anybody here would question your devotion or dedication. I have seen you in countless hours going above and beyond, and as a resident, I appreciate that. But I also believe in accountability. You've never had an issue with that, but when you retire, are we going to open this up to a popularity contest where a person could come into work and say, I'm going to work 2 days this week, and I'm going to take 3 off, and then I'm going to be off for the weekend? And is there anything anybody can do? I'm certainly not looking for the additional control or power or whatever one word to call it. But I do believe that a town manager, he or she should be accountable to a select board, and if they're not doing their job, and there's just cause to remove him or her, then they can be removed. I don't know of any department head in this town that has ever been removed for less than just cause. In the situation where there's the type of situation that you're describing or did describe, I'd love to know what that town is, because quite frankly, they need to see a lawyer. And the civil litigation that could potentially arise from either the manager's actions or the select board's actions would be potential punitive damages. And I'm not a lawyer, but what I would say is I know there's a lot of lawyers that would certainly be interested in taking that type of a case, probably on a contingency basis. So my question isn't about you, it's about accountability for whoever your successor is. And I don't mean anything disrespectful from anybody in the office that might be interested.
Right.
I'm focusing solely on accountability. The manager, he or she is accountable to the select board. The department heads are accountable to the manager. The subordinates or the staff are accountable to the department head. It seems like a simple and effective chain of command and organizational table.
Right. The only difference is the town clerk answers to 14,450 bosses.
But the select board does. And I guess what I'm saying is, and again, it's almost appearing as though it's self-serving to the manager. I wish at this moment, I wasn't the manager, because I'd be advocating the same thing. I think hypothetically, I think you had mentioned something about maybe a select board taking a swipe at a town clerk. They can't directly. They can take a swipe at the manager, but they can't take a swipe at a department head directly. So basically, if the select board were to do something that was inappropriate, then they would have to go through 2 layers. They got to go through the manager to get to the town clerk or to the department head. In the situation where the manager did something that was totally inappropriate, like you described, the department head could go to the select board, and the select board would say, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah. I get that, but we hear this on the news all the time, this stuff happens.
But
So-
is this coming to the surface and being exposed? Because what you are describing is just out of the ballpark.
Folks, let's do this. The premise today was that we would not debate the issues in this forum, and this is kind of bordering on that.
I'm sorry.
Apology accepted. It's been a healthy discussion, but these are the kind of things that there might not be an end to unless we create one. This topic of department heads and town clerks will be revisited by this committee. And I think all department heads in the town that are identified or committee members in the charter should be encouraged and are welcome to come to our meetings, particularly when we're discussing that topic. So I think given the diversity of views on this topic, that would be very appropriate for you to attend a session when we're focusing on the town clerk's position, and we can let you know when that's going to happen.
So may I ask why you're
This is-
considering changing it?
No, we haven't discussed why we want to change it yet. We haven't made any conclusions. That's true of everything that we've covered so far. So it's premature to speculate on how this committee views the topic. That's the reason we would like to get your input and anybody else's in one of our regular forums, rather than consuming this public hearing to debate the issues. Any topic that's been brought up tonight is debatable. We just don't have the time tonight to focus on one area.
All right,
But-
I'll be back.
We hope so.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair, I have a question too.
Yes.
I just want to, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. How important is an independent person to be in this position to determine maybe regulatory rules when it comes to elections and local elections, and also ethical issues regarding elections? Should they not be encumbered by any type of political agenda or group that might be pressuring them?
Well, that's something that could possibly happen either way, appointed or elected. I just feel that with a stronger, with a town clerk who's elected, you have a stronger position because you don't have to fear any kind of repercussions or, any threats by anybody. And I really am not talking about any of us tonight. I'm just talking about the position and the positions of administration.
Right. Mary?
Yeah, so when we came in, this document was at my seat, and it's
Everybody
called,
got one?
it's called The Position of Town Clerk in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Who gave this to us?
I did.
Oh, you did, okay. Could we get this posted on our webpage?
We can talk about it at our regular
It's
meeting.
30 pages
I haven't
long,
seen it
Mary. I
myself.
wouldn't.
No, I think this is key
Well, let's talk,
for
we'll talk.
people to understand what a town clerk does, because this is 30 pages.
I haven't seen it. I don't have an opinion on it, but we can talk about anything that we may want to or not want to post.
My only other question on this, can we get the date that this was last revised, if you know it? Because there's no
On
date.
my desktop, I saw a 2014 date.
Thank you.
Don?
So just following up in regard to accountability, I was surprised because my memory obviously is faulty here, that the term is 3 years, because originally, I thought it was 2 years. Given the provisions for recalling an elected official, which are fairly onerous, do you feel that 3 years is adequate? Or 2 years would be fine? You know, our House of Representatives, they're elected for 2 years. If you don't like them, you can get somebody new.
So you have procedures for appointed employees. You get a verbal warning. You go through this whole process if they're incapable. And when you do your
Progressive discipline.
I'm sorry?
Progressive discipline.
progressive
Right.
discipline.
I don't believe that takes 3 years.
But the town, no. If the town clerk elected
Yeah.
is inept and incapable of doing his or her job,
Right?
you have 6 months and you can recall him.
Right, but my comment was the provisions for doing a recall of an elected official
Yeah?
are fairly onerous. And it's not likely that that would happen for any elected official in Mashpee, in my personal opinion.
Good.
So I'm just wondering, because of those, either we need to think about maybe changing those provisions, or if we have and this is a unique position because it's not a multi-member elected board or committee, should it still have a 3-year period, or should it have a shorter period given that? And I'm just
So-
asking your opinion.
So you're asking if everybody else should be a 3-year term that's elected and the town clerk a 2-year position?
Or what, or a different period.
Well-
I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion.
Personally,
as an
I always
option.
thought all the elected positions should be 4-year positions and be opposite of the November state elections. Save the town a little money because you don't have a local election every year. You have a local election every other year, like the town of Barnstable.
So is that a recommendation that you would make
I like that.
in regard to
Likes to save
all of the
money.
elected officials in the charter? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Sure. Hey,
Now, that's something to consider potentially. But back to the town clerk position, if you're looking at this from 10,000 feet, what's your thought on that? Should it be 4 years? Is other elected officials that you're
it should be
proposing?
it should be aligned with all the other town elected positions.
All the other multi-member ones?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
This is a great discussion, but exactly the kind that we should be dealing with
Yeah,
at a
I'm
forum
getting too far
focused
into
on that subject.
Any other-
Anything new tonight? Okay, Deb, thank you very much.
All right.
One question, Mr. Chair. On this
Sorry.
on this document, who created it? Is it from the?
I have no idea.
Is it a state document, or is it
There is
an
stuff in there that I
association?
had added in, but you'll find that I was taking stuff out, I was crossing stuff out. I honestly don't know who created this document, but it was sent to everybody. And there are things that, am I doing everything that's on this list? No. Can I be? Sure. I don't sell fishing licenses anymore, hunting, that's all through the state. And with computerized progress going forward, sometimes there's less and less of these things that are being handled on a personal level. You go online, you order your state beach pass. Used to be you went down to Walk Point Estuary and you got it. Now you go online.
I know you want to move along, Mr. Chair, but I just have one follow-up to that.
All right. I'll be awaiting your second apology tonight. so-
I'm gonna zip it after this. To follow up on Select Board Whedon's question, is this the model job description for town clerks in the Commonwealth? Or did you bring this in because you're performing the majority of these essential
No,
functions?
this is a model.
This is the model.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank-
Who's next?
Thank you.
Anybody next? Since we did not have a public comment agenda item, if you have a public comment, this would be an opportunity too. Okay.
Again, Lynn Barbie, 73 Surf Drive. I hadn't put this in my notes, but I was thinking about it a lot as I was reading over the charter. As we are trying very hard to get this building into the 21st century with electronics and media, I think it would be helpful to have in the charter the goals of public participation and communication with the voters, with the residents. And I know that, for example, we have a call-in number tonight, but in most of these meetings recently, there's been no call-in number. There's been televised, but not a call-in number. So if there's some way to include that in the charter of the goal of really making sure that we use all technology and all available means of communication to reach out to our residents, I think that would be really helpful, because I don't think we do a very good job of that right now. And part of it is we need to get this building into the 21st century. But I think this is just, it's a side issue, but I think it's important.
No argument here. Thank you. Yes. Hi.
Greetings. My name is Shirley Hyrock. I live at 8A Alice Lopez. I haven't been attending the meeting, so I'm not fully up to date, but I took one thing into my concern is we should have a Wampanoag representative on all your committees. And I will start attending more selectmen meetings and getting more people involved. And I keep hearing the word diversity. But when I look around, I do not see a diversity. So I think we need to work on that. So I will be coming to your meetings, and you need to keep an open seat for every Wampanoag on each committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can tell you you're not unique with that comment, so. Any other input to the public hearing? Anything from the committee? In which case, I would entertain a motion to
Close the public
close
hearing.
the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Discussion? Discussion?
All right.
Are we going to have another public hearing?
Yes,
Okay, thank
at
you.
least one, probably several.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Close the hearing. Thank you all for coming, and to expand on that last comment, as I say, we're starting Section 4 of the 8-part charter. We'll probably be through the end of the summer, if not into the fall, by the time we have had identified at least those areas that we want to further massage. And over the course of the summer, and most especially probably this fall, we would specifically want input from anybody that has something relevant on each part of the charter that's important to them. So, for example, the town clerk, obviously, that's a significant topic with a lot of emotional potential for it, and we would want to exhaust a discussion and a debate on that in a constructive manner at a meeting that's appropriate for that, along with anything else. So at some point, my guess is, and we'll talk about this in the meeting, we'll have a public hearing as we proceed through this 8-part section, much like we're doing tonight, just to listen more than to debate. And then the committee will do its real work in trying to go through it sentence by sentence, word by word, and making recommendations of what we as a consensus think is appropriate, excuse me, and in the best interest of the town and the people that live in the town, which is really the benchmark that we're living up to. So at that point this fall, there would probably be some sort of a draft document, tentative though it would be, that would contain a lot of these conclusions that we've reached. And that would be distributed and available to everybody to pick apart and comment on further, which would happen at a subsequent public hearing, as well as our regular open meetings when they happen. Yes, David?
I don't know if Mary.
He had his two fingers up
Just
first.
real quick, Mr. Chair, I forgot to ask you if we received any written comments during the public
Those are the
hearing.
two written comments that we received.
So we might want to acknowledge them at this point. Do you want me to
Feel
read
free.
who they are? Okay, so we got two written comments. Charter review thoughts from Mark Whitman dated 6/14 to the town moderator.
Actually, it's actually addressed to the Charter Review Committee, which is an alias for my mailbox.
Oh, I'm sorry. So okay, yeah. And then next one is entitled Public Comment 620 from Michaela Wyman Colombo. Again, it went to the town moderator's email, but it's to the Charter Review Committee. And I just would recommend that these are posted on our webpage for people to look at, because I really don't want to summarize them right now.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, Mr. Chair, my question was, having heard from the public, I'm just wondering, how do we capture and synthesize kind of what we've heard at today's public hearing? And then, do we, at a future public hearing, do we kind of give an update on how those things were considered and how they were factored in, if they were able to be incorporated, if they weren't? To give feedback to those that took the time to come in and participate. Is that something?
Well, my answer would be, since you're directing the question at me, is that Stephanie Coleman, who we're delighted to have as our recording administrative person, will have comprehensive minutes that capture the comments that were made tonight. We will use those as we discuss the other elements of the charter and fold that into the thinking. The output of that would be the result of the consensus that we reach on which of those suggestions and changes should be made. I don't see that it's feasible, practical, or necessary to acknowledge all of the words that were exchanged tonight unless we're planning to absorb them in our discussion and render it in some form in the charter. If there were comments made tonight as constructive as they were intended to be, that we as a committee don't think fit the vision that we have, they would be omitted, and then when people see that omission happen, they're welcome to come back and raise the topic again. At least that's how I see it.
May I? So I think what David and I have experience on the planning board, that's kind of what you're talking about on the planning board. Every single comment we got during a public hearing had to be addressed, because that's how a special permit granting authority goes. I think, and it actually is nice because you tie up all the loose ends.
I would expect they would be addressed. I'm just not saying that we're going to adopt every suggestion that was made. We may. I just don't know. We haven't gotten that far.
And then also, the Cape Cod Commission, they kind of do something similar, where sometimes they, you try to develop a matrix and, give very short descriptions of the comments that were captured. Also, with my position, my day job, is always commenting on projects and things, and so that's something that we ask for typically is, a matrix to show how things were factored into your decision-making process. Were they able to be achieved? Were they not able to be achieved? If there's reasons why, then, it just gives a clear, concise way to feel like people's voices were heard, and for me, and during a day job, that's kind of what I'm referencing, is it works, on those situations anyway. I do understand this is a complicated document, and, we're going to do our best to capture comments and address them and debate them, but, I just want to make sure the public feels like, their time's worthwhile and things are factored in as best as can be. So I didn't know if that.
Does anyone here tonight have a notion that that might not happen, just out of curiosity? That's good.
Yeah.
So we're on the right track then. So I guess I kind of liken it to, you hear all the time when when a 15,000-page bill comes before Congress, what you hear is the top of the iceberg, where the legislatures are debating the hot topic portions of that. And then everything else, meritorious as it is and well-intentioned, well-written and all of that, tends to be set aside. I don't think that's a good practice. At the very least, everybody would read all of the pages in the bill, just as we're going to see all of the comments that were made here tonight and roll that into our collective thinking. In an abundance of optimism, I say that.
I would like to thank the members of the public who did come here and speak. I think it's important to take time out of either your busy schedule or other conflicts or obligations, and the fact that you took the time to come in and face us face to face and make the comments, it's appreciated.
Yeah, you folks are the gold standard, the ones that we never hear from, we still never hear from.
Yeah, so we had 10 participants and 2 written comments, so I'm proud of that. That's good.
And the 2 written comments, thank you. Don't want
Yeah,
to forget about
I
them.
forgot to bring that up before.
I have a written comment. Who should I leave this with, the secretary?
Sure, thank you. Okay, thank you all. I join in Mr. Collins' comment. We appreciate your coming here, and you're welcome to stay as we continue. I came to the realization after I circulated these minutes that we did conclude Article number 3 at our last meeting. So there is no old business unless anybody
agenda, right,
unless
okay.
anyone disagrees.
And I'm like, wait a minute. You scared me, John. I was like, I thought we did.
Yeah, well, you're right, see, this is, I can relate to David about his day job situation.
I'm just saying,
here.
just so it's on record, the minutes, we're waiting for those to come, correct? Okay,
Yeah.
well, we had that discussion before we convened, so I just want it to go on record.
Yeah, I provided the recording secretary with copies of the rough drafts that I had for the last 2 meetings, along with audio for both of those meetings. And I'm sure she'll do a fantastic job in translating that into something meaningful for the committee to review at a subsequent meeting. So, thank you.
As soon as I get them from Stephanie, I'll get them circulated. But I imagine at our next meeting in July, we'll talk about dates in a bit here, we would have the minutes from the 6th, the 13th, and today. And I think as of today, the minutes for our first 2 meetings, May 30th and June 6th, are on the website, on our page. All right, so it's a little before 8. Would you like to proceed and start with Article number 4, which is Carol?
Okay, Section 4-1, appointment, qualification, and term, I think kind of speaks for itself. I didn't think anything really needed to be changed wording-wise. We did bring up a question at our last meeting on the makeup of the board that sifts through the applications of a town manager, and I have sat on that. It was 2 selectmen, finance, town moderator, and Rodney had brought up that it's really the selectmen that should, and they get the final, but they can't proceed with the proceedings because it would have to go into executive session with each individual.
Where are you?
For a town manager, remember Rodney brought
Right, the
up,
last
It's-
sentence of the first paragraph, remember last, we spoke about.
we were talking about that just before
Oh,
we.
so, sorry, so the town manager shall be appointed from a list prepared by a screening committee established by bylaw. Okay, and what's your comment?
Well, it has to be, Rodney had brought up the fact that maybe the selectmen, we should change that to have the Board of Selectmen pick the new town manager.
Oh, I see.
And
I see.
you would have to go through executive session to do that, and I don't think
a five-member board should pick. I think the way the matrix is set up for it to be done is done right, for that reason. You know what I mean? Because it says, where is it?
So you're trying to keep the preliminary screening
Screening.
committee out of the public view?
Right, exactly.
Oh,
The
okay.
screening of a new town manager, when they interview.
They're not a public body.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting to look at it that way.
And not have, I mean, you bring it to the selectmen, and then they vote on the final.
Yeah.
But to go through the screening, we had, when we did the town manager, when I did it, we had the Collins Institute
Right.
interview them and then give us the 5 or 6. And then we narrowed that down to 3.
And I'm not suggesting that the select board shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is it should be up to the select board. So if they want to do that, they can. If you don't want to do that, then you don't have to.
Right.
Whereas if it's in the charter, you don't really have any wiggle room. You have to go by
Right.
this process. And there's nothing that says that the select board, whoever they may be, can't determine that there'll be a screening committee consisting of A, B, C, D, E,
Right.
in order to filter the manager candidate to the select board. Do you follow me?
Yep. I'm back on track. I got a little lost.
Okay.
I'm back on
Okay.
track.
Whereas the preliminary screening committee would be out of public view. The finalists, as they typically are, would be in public view before the select board.
But there's nothing to say the opposite, that the select board could decide not to put a screening committee together, I guess, and I like that it's written that it has to be this process. You know, I feel like it's a little bit, if you're looking at it from the other side, this is like, I feel it provides that safe, I don't want to say safeguard, but I feel like it gets a little bit more perspective from a variety of places as opposed to just the 5 that are, and I hear what you're saying, and I
I hear what
understand
you're
the
saying.
comment. I just, I personally agree with Carol on this, and I like the way that it is set up, because I feel like it provides a little bit more transparency in terms of the appointment of the town.
The only thing that I see, and I agree fully that, I like the fact that it shall be appointed from a list prepared by a screening committee. That part I like. I'm wondering, is there, need for a kind of a criterion on how to frame the screening process on preferred requirements and things? Should something like that be added? Or is that going a little too far?
I understand your point, and I think the select board should be able to establish that as either a minimum requirement or a preferred requirement or ideal requirement. I wouldn't suggest that you put it in the charter, only because there's nothing, again, that prevents the select board from doing that by majority vote, by saying, whoever my successor is, that person is decided based on this criteria. And that criteria would be established by the select board.
And I think you're going to have to move to the other side of the room.
Should that,
No, that makes it worse. I'm sorry, David, no.
Pardon the rude appearance here.
That's worse, that's worse.
That's
No,
worse.
We're just gonna make Ann move over there. You move back the way you were. Ann, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go on the left side of the room. I'm sorry.
So,
What were you
I
saying,
could go over
David?
here.
I'm sorry.
no,
I almost asked for a break in between the public hearing, and obviously I needed one. I'm listening.
so as a follow-up, would it be beneficial to add that kind of language that specific criterion would be established by the select board or
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. that
I
would be
I
good.
really like that.
Yep.
Criteria to be
Agreed.
established by the select board.
Agreed, just like he said it.
just so that delegated responsibility, that responsibility is delegated and is clear.
I like that idea of the
Yeah.
criteria
Yeah.
by the, because the select board is going to be making sure the
Making-
committee is what
Right.
it is, but then
Exactly.
giving the directive
But
to
they
that
give them
screening
the
committee. I think
So-
that makes sense.
So, John, the criteria would be established by the select board in advance.
Ooh, I like that.
Makes sense.
I like that a lot.
So I have a question in regard to the statement here that the town manager does not have to be a resident
I know.
of
I know.
Mashpee, only a resident of the Commonwealth.
For the
I-
record, my contract says I have to live in Mashpee.
Mashpee, right.
And so
Right.
should it, in my opinion.
And I think you should, because I think you put more of yourself in your own town. You're
But
making
when you
decisions.
finish that sentence, it does say, shall establish a, well, actually, no, it's the common,
No.
never mind.
Within the
Sorry.
Commonwealth.
Within the
So,
Commonwealth.
as a
They can be
municipal
living
employee,
in,
Right.
you know, the Berkshires.
I know.
As a municipal employee and a union member, I'm dead set against that.
Why?
Yep, because the way it plays out in real life. Theoretically, it sounds like a great idea, but in real life, people get harassed.
I've never
Right?
been harassed.
People
but-
get harassed, you know. Well, I do something very different. I create affordable housing, okay? I would not want to live in the town where I created affordable housing. People are mean about it. I'm sorry. It can get pretty vicious.
I won't deny there's mean
Also,
people.
I mean, I think that emergency responders have to live within a certain amount of time, you know, so they can, if they're on call or something, like they have to be around to do that. But otherwise, I think people should be free to live where they want to live. Sometimes you have to move because of family constraints, caregiving, that kind of stuff.
But we're only talking the town
I mean,
manager. We're not
I'd never give you a
talking-
hard time in the
Right,
supermarket, Rodney,
We're not
but.
talking every other position. We're just talking the town manager.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying that I know town managers that are thankful that they don't have to live in the same town, that they have to make critical decisions in, and they're uncomfortable. They shop in they go to supermarkets in another town because they just can't get in and out of the supermarket.
Wow,
So
is Yvonne
I-
still here? She left? I see Yvonne
Really?
in the supermarket, and we have great
Have
conversations.
great conversations, yeah, no, I know, I think that that should be flexible. That's
So
all.
for me, I feel like, I do understand Mary's points. As far as living outside of the Commonwealth, that I'm not supportive of, because, if you're going to bring on a town manager or somebody that's, going to be overseeing the operations of the town, I'd hope that they have relevant kind of knowledge about the town that they're going to be, overseeing. And so I would encourage that they live, and, I like the follow-up sentence where it says, at the time of appointment, shall establish a residence within the Commonwealth within 1 year. But, I don't know, I think the Commonwealth has, we're an educated state. We have a lot of qualified professionals, and I would encourage hiring somebody from within the Commonwealth to do the job, and would prefer that, to Mary's point, they don't necessarily have to live within the town of Mashpee, but they should be able to live within, 30, 40-mile radius, just so that
Well, okay,
they're in the area.
that point that you're saying, but when we put out a job application for people, we give first
Yeah, do we give
credit.
preference?
We give preference if they live in
All things
Mashpee.
being equal.
You know,
Right, but
Being
that's
from
that's
Mashpee.
the select board's criteria, so
Right.
you're free to do that. I just think that there's reasons why, I wouldn't want to have like the dream candidate be excluded by charter because they are a caretaker of an elderly person and have to live in Sandwich. Like, that to me is too much. Just some flexibility on that.
I completely respect those views, but ultimately, I would respectfully disagree on the manager. I understand the staff that you're referring to, but the manager is putting together a budget that impacts this community.
And himself.
And if they can't live here, then I don't know that he or she should be putting that budget together. So you might want to change the charter in regards to the budget if the manager's not going to live here, in my view. Now, I'm just being blunt. I think what would be reasonable is a requirement that he or she be required to have a domicile in the jurisdiction of Mashpee within 1 year, or show cause to the select board as to why they can't obtain residency in the town of Mashpee, and that I could understand.
I like that.
I
Do
do.
you like that?
I like that a lot, yeah, because,
Because-
I mean, to Mary's point of view, excuse me, but there are situations where someone moves into a job and for whatever reason, they can't find housing, or there's a situation with family, and they're responsible to the select board, and the select board can make that call.
Leave it up to the select board, but it puts the responsibility on that manager to go to the select board and basically show cause as to why they can't live here. But if you disagree, I'm okay.
I do disagree only because I feel like, 2 points. You're limiting your pool of candidates, I think. I think you're really gonna.
No, this is, you
I understand when they
don't
have
have to
that
be a
year.
Mashpee resident to
Still
apply.
limiting your pool of candidates by
You're
doing that.
still limiting your pool of candidates, and I worry, we were talking last time about finding people to step up into these positions. Yvonne mentioned she'd like to see more people engaged. I wrote down one of my big, how? But I feel like if we're limiting the scope so much, and maybe even a little bit, I feel like is going to be detrimental by putting it in the charter, because when you look at these positions and you look at the candidates who are coming forward, I have a concern that, is it necessarily bad that they don't live in town? I hear your point that if they don't live here, they might not understand the ins and outs. But on the flip side, does that put a little bit more impartiality into their creation of the budget? Are they a little bit more able to step back and not be as influenced by a good town manager shouldn't be, but let's be real, there could be things that could influence them. Same could be said the other way, but I guess I worry that it's limiting, and I worry that, I don't know that I feel as strongly that they need to live in town in order to understand the town. Does it help? Does it
And I
give
respect
them
that.
preferential treatment? Sure, I do think we should try to find people in town. I think that would be ideal. Reality, are we gonna have that many people in town come forward that are qualified? And ultimately, they are answering to the select board, and it would be on the select board to ensure that that town manager is performing their duties to the utmost quality and standards that the town expects them to. I feel like there's enough of that oversight by the select board to keep them motivated to work in the best interest of the
I'm trying
town.
to remember when we went out for the position. I think we had like 25 applicants.
And how many of them are Mashpee residents, though?
That I don't remember, but there was quite a few that lived on the Cape.
But you wouldn't have to be a Mashpee resident to get the job, it's after you get the job.
Right.
You have to be a Mashpee
Let's
resident.
say.
But then the housing market in
Let's say
Mashpee,
I'm a
like,
mom.
is that
Yes.
gonna? And so, again,
Right.
I'm looking at that reality
So,
too.
I'm a mom. I have a child in a school system. I have my MPA. Now I'm gonna switch jobs. When I look at that job description, boom, I'm not even gonna apply for someplace that's gonna make me leave because my kid is already settled in a great school.
Even if you
Absolutely, because how many years is your child in school? For 12, right? So I'm gonna say it out loud. It's, that requirement is gonna block women from applying. Caregivers, you're living in the house where, somebody elderly in your family needs care. You're not gonna be
I
able to
get
move
that.
everybody. And caregiving and those issues about school fall on women in the family. And it's, I just, it's a red flag for me.
It falls on men too. I mean, we live in a very diverse society where men and women are doing a variety
I
of
think
different tasks in the
statistically,
home.
you would find that those things fall on the responsibility. I'm not saying men aren't precluded from those, but caregiving does fall on women.
So one of the reasons,
Foresee any limitations on that?
I would-
If they chose to commute from
Like,
Sturbridge, would that be acceptable?
Like the range that we do for a police officer or for a fireman?
yeah, I don't know what those are.
They have to live in a radius. Rodney, what is it? A radius of what?
I'm sorry.
A police officer or a fireman?
I believe we pulled the radius on the firefighters, except for those that are on, what's that?
Reserve?
Recall. In terms of the officers, I think it's 15 miles, or maybe it's 20.
I think it was
Something like that, a reasonable commute, a reasonable commute. It really is bothersome to me if somebody doesn't respond to a crisis in the municipality because it's a Saturday and they live too far away. That's not an acceptable reason. So there could be something like that, but,
well, and that's part of the reason why I believe it's important for them to be a resident, because if there is a crisis or something
They're
happens,
involved.
they're there and can respond immediately. They're not across on the other side of the pond and have to try to get here to be able to interact, or they're dependent upon communication, which may or may not be available, particularly if we have a severe storm. Where are they going to be? Are they going to be here with us, or are they going to be watching on
but if you did a
TV?
time limit, if you did a commute, Sandwich is closer than to this building than some places in southern part of Mashpee. It's easier to get, you know what I mean? Like, if you did the time commute thing, I think that would be more reasonable.
Well,
I can respect Mary's position, especially with regards to how it affects women and caregivers and things of that nature. So, I guess my question would be, do you see the same issue, rather than limiting it to where you're requiring them to live in town, kind of framing it where, preference shall be given
Preference.
to those that,
Yep.
reside in,
I think the select board can make the preference when they open up the search.
so you're not omitting, qualified applicants and women.
Well, I can remember there was one applicant that was Rhode Island.
And I just don't see, you're out of state, coming across the bitch every day.
Well, no.
To me, that says they're gonna relocate
You gotta work
them.
remotely.
How are they going to respond to an emergency
Exactly.
on a
When we have a
Saturday
snowstorm.
in July,
Right.
Or even coming from Boston.
living
Well,
on
we
the other
did.
side of the bridge?
That could be something the screening committee could ask and say, do you
So-
plan on moving here?
So I understand Mary's point. I do, and I'm not going to argue those points. The only thing that I was thinking of, and I wasn't thinking of that scenario, I was thinking, if I'm John Q. taxpayer or Jane Q. taxpayer, and I'm looking at that book, seeing what the manager makes, and I'm saying, that person is responsible for sending out my
Tax bill.
budget, and now that person is living over the bridge or something like that, as a taxpayer, that doesn't go over well.
It didn't with the last town manager.
But that's just my opinion, but anyway,
I think
You're
we've
telling me to zip it
identified, the possible solutions to this, or at least the questions to be resolved which we'll do at a later time.
How about
So-
the word preference? Did you make
Yeah.
reference to that?
So
Thank you.
It sounds like this topic gets added to our, top 10
top.
list of debatable areas. I suppose another, it then follows, well, is it a different role for the assistant town manager, or a different role for the department heads, et cetera, et cetera? Let's not open that box, but I'm just mentioning it.
I was only referring to the town manager.
Understood. Which is the only one that.
That we're talking about.
That the select board
Yeah.
deals with.
That's right.
So, yeah, understood. Okay. Where are we, Carol?
Okay, next is
4-2? Okay. Yep. Anything there?
4-2-B.
B.
B?
I would love Rodney to make me a very simplified list as to who the department heads, town officers, and members of
Member bodies, yeah.
Yeah.
Say that again?
So in B, it talks about the powers and duties of the town managers to appoint in appropriate circumstances, and then it has a list, all department heads, town officers, and members of multifamily boards for whom no other method of selection is provided in this charter.
I'm sorry, Mary, what was the issue?
In section 4-2B.
No, I saw
right?
what you read.
So I was wondering if you could give me a list of the department
List,
heads,
oh.
town officers, and members of multifamily, multiple member bodies that you appoint,
Yeah,
just so I can, wrap my head around it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I didn't hear the word list.
I think it would be helpful just for understanding and put it in context. I'd have to agree. It'd be good to understand where those separations lie to what's.
I can give you the short version. The fire department, the appointing authority is the fire chief. Police department, it's the police chief. For all others, it's the town manager, unless you were talking about multi-member body, then it would be the select board.
But
Boards
there
and
are other,
committees.
there are other committees. Aren't there other public bodies that you appoint?
It's generally going to the board.
Okay.
I mean, I could do like a ad hoc committee that is not,
Ad hoc,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
it's,
All right.
it's not a regulatory authority or even an advisory board. It would be going to actually the select board.
So is there a body that you would appoint, or somebody that you would?
I think I've had one or two under unique circumstances, like an ad hoc group that filed a report or something, but
There's not an established.
no.
The town seal.
Yeah, well, that I brought to the select board.
What about like a working group, working?
That's what I'm
committee
talking about.
For like Cablevision?
That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Okay, so you can form your own ad hoc group.
Ad hoc, but not,
Yeah,
they've
it's
got
not a
no
formal, yeah. It's an
authority to
advisory
do anything other than just
Advisory,
file a opinion.
yeah, they're an advisory group,
Yeah.
okay.
On 4-2B, that same first paragraph, we talk about the town bulletin board. Can we make sure whatever we land on with the website or
Right.
electronic bulletin board?
Right,
we
exactly.
include that, please?
Now, what about the
Where's that, Kathy?
First paragraph of B, last sentence, or, yeah,
It's
last
the
sentence.
last.
sorry. The diversity and equity and inclusion, that's a multi-member board. Is that considered like an ad hoc group?
That's appointed by the select board.
Yeah, I think that was created by the select board. The
Yes.
charge was approved by the
It
select
had a
board, and they
different
appointed
name.
them.
It had a different name, and we modified the name or the title of.
Amended the pre-existing, yeah.
Yes.
It was precinct. I can't remember, I was on it too, and I can't remember the name.
I've got something on paragraph C. We're comfortable turning the page. Kathy, I have a question for you. The town manager shall prepare and keep, the last sentence, current, a plan establishing the personnel staffing requirements for each town agency, except the school department. Now, who sets that up?
Except for what?
The school department.
Except for the school department.
Right.
So is that the superintendent of schools?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And is that like, how does that get established if it's not established in the charter?
Usually it's based on, enrollment, how many students we have helps dictate the faculty requirements, looking at, number of special needs students or.
No, I mean, who
certain-
empowers the superintendent of schools to do that? Is it the school committee
The
or
school
is
committee
state
via,
statute?
school
Okay.
committee via the budget.
Okay.
So we
All right,
do that via the budget.
thank you.
D's fine. There's no issue there. And E's fine, too.
And it should be noted that all of these should be changed to select board.
Yes.
Right.
I think I saw somewhere in this, I forget where exactly. So if there's any sort of grievance or conflict of interest, does that fall under your authority as, to do kind of an investigation?
That would be.
I mean, for me, I think, I don't know if it would be good to kind of have kind of an independent committee to insulate you from, having to deal with that.
I have no problems with that.
And also having kind of an independent review,
Yep.
by
that?
establishing.
He's jumping ahead.
Oh, you're jumping
You're
ahead.
jumping ahead to M.
Where you at, Dave?
All right.
I'm on H.
Because I had the question on
I'm on
G
H,
and
too.
I had a question on G and I just wanted to make sure we were clear, but M is what you're talking about, which was a good one.
Oh, I have that marked with a question mark.
I did too.
All right.
So if I could address that issue, I mean, if hypothetically there's a conflict perceived and it was reported and I felt that it could be investigated from a preliminary standpoint in a fair, impartial, accurate manner in short order, what I would suggest is that the select board, under those circumstances, can take a look at the findings of fact, and then if they wanted a second set of eyes, they, the select board, can order for an investigation, which is in another part of the charter that we've already covered. Just like the manager has the authority to order an investigation, the select board does as well. So you get two layers of potential quote-unquote investigations.
Can I just read this M out loud, just so I understand it? To inquire at any, this is the powers,
You're at M?
M.
Yeah.
powers and
As in-
duties of the town
M as
manager.
in Mary?
Yeah, M as in Mary, on
Okay.
page 17. To acquire at any time into the conduct of office or performance of duties of any officer or employee, department, board, commission, or other town agency. Have you ever done that?
I would not look into a board or a commission without the authority of the board, to answer your question.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Somebody would have
Like, you
to.
could, it's in your power and duty, but
If-
you, as the current town manager, you're waiting for any type of signal to do that from the select.
For a board or for a commission, if it's a widespread issue, which fortunately I have not had to deal with, but if it was a widespread issue in a department, then obviously I would bring somebody in from the outside to conduct a thorough and hopefully a very comprehensive investigation if it was perceived to be serious. We have not had that issue. If there's an individual who is accused of misconduct, then it all depends upon what the circumstances are. If the person was hypothetically reported late for work 3 times, well, we don't need a big investigation. We just need to check some cameras and find out whether or not that's true.
And that also goes under L Mod M, so. I
Right.
forget what L says.
If it's a situation where an employee was accused of stealing or some serious misconduct that could result in a job loss, then it is the responsibility of the appointing authority, whoever it may be, to conduct a thorough investigation and get to the bottom of the facts and find out the truth, and once that's flushed out, take the appropriate action. If the appointing authority did not do his or her job, then they shouldn't remain in their job.
It's something to kind of think about, that M. I'd like to maybe look at how other towns deal with that. Because one of the boards that you could investigate is the select board, the way it's written.
Yeah.
Well,
You could use town resources to investigate the select board, and maybe that's not a bad thing. I have to
Well,
think about it.
And I would just concur
I
that
know,
the
I
way
know.
it's written, he could actually go into the schools too.
Because it doesn't say.
Because it's not
It's a
precluded,
school committee.
Yeah.
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 Or,
Yes.
or the school's operations.
It almost provides an oversight to those boards as well, is kind of how, I mean,
Uh-oh, did we just explain Rodney how much power he has in town?
Well, it's kind of the God, it's a God
there,
power.
black and white already.
It's right there, it's right there.
I think it was
I think,
intended to do good, but could potentially be.
Oh, yeah, no,
mischievous.
I think, and then if it's, what I'm saying is if it's not there, there's a void in power. If something is really going bad, like really going wrong, let's say absenteeism.
Right.
Let's just use like absentee, you don't have quorum. You don't have quorum for a major board or committee, whether
Right.
they're elected or appointed. You know, this way, the town manager can investigate it and then go forward and propose a solution.
and I dare say that whoever the manager was, if they initiated an investigation without any reasonable basis, the select board could certainly say, what are you doing?
What do you do, right?
This isn't appropriate. If the investigation itself was appropriate and necessary, given the totality of the circumstances and the findings of fact dictated certain actions to be taken, and everything was in order, then the manager's doing his or her job.
Right.
Rodney, out of curiosity, does your contract reference this section of the charter?
It basically mirrors the.
Oh, it's part of the-
yeah,
it's in
and
the
yes.
text of
Grabbed
the-
it
Yes.
Okay.
tonight. Kathy, you said on G?
I had a question with,
So
regard.
if
Sorry, yep,
we did make
yep.
any changes in the charter, it wouldn't,
It would have
it
to,
may or may not provoke a change in your contract.
I'm sure I
next
could sit
theory.
down with the select board and get it resolved.
Thank you.
I guess
Kathy.
I was just looking for, I suppose, just a point of continuity between G and I. It talks about property under the control of the school committee versus jurisdiction of the school committee. And is jurisdiction, are we talking the same thing? Is control, I mean, are we going to assume that's the same? Because, you know, as we know in Mashpee, the schools are owned by the town, maintained by DPW with input from the school committee.
well, they're saying inventory. The word, I think, in I is inventory.
Yeah, and that's required by law, the
Okay.
By-
inventory.
Right.
And where G is jurisdiction over rental and use
Okay.
of town
And- and-
facilities.
And I think that's under manager because of the status of chief procurement officer.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify again, just to make sure I understood.
I'm not coming after your school,
I
Des.
didn't. I- Wasn't my question, so again, just wanted to clarify.
I had that.
Okay,
I
Jay.
figured someone else would have that, so.
Okay, on,
So,
not quite.
Dawn's over.
so before we leave G,
Be careful what you say, Dawn, no I'm kidding.
Let me go back here.
before we leave G, I think we've ultimately gotten to a good place, but it took a long time to get there and a lot of work. And I think, there's personalities currently involved to prevent unintended consequences. But new people down the road might not see it in the same manner. In regard to the rental and use of town facilities, and in particular, school and facilities within the school, primarily.
It says except property under the school.
Well, here's where the question comes.
I see what you're saying. I know where you're going.
Yeah, I know where you're
I can
going.
fill in the blanks.
You can probably articulate it better than me.
Because the buildings fall under the jurisdiction of DPW, there is concern there. So I would suggest, in the spirit of harmony
Cooperation.
and cooperation and collaboration, I suggest a change, Mr. Chair, to be determined that would clarify that this does not refer to the school buildings.
I think that's kind of where I was
Yep.
also
Yeah.
trying to get,
Well,
so
that's what
thank you for
we
adding
know,
on to
but
that,
it's not
Dawn.
exactly
See-
worded.
see how
worded.
easy that was?
You're right, you're right. See, I read it like it did, but I can see where it would be.
It can be interpreted
Yep.
It
many
could be.
different ways.
You're right, you're
But
right.
in all seriousness, folks, we're not always going to be sitting here. Certainly, I'm not always going to be sitting here, and you don't know how somebody else is going to read that.
Right.
Read into it.
And
You're
that's
right.
the problem.
And I don't think, I don't believe I'm going to be sitting here in 10 years, so you want to make sure that you don't have to wait 10 years before you change.
I won't, that's for sure. All right. Thank you for,
So that's the
Resolve
first
it.
real change that we have,
So you've got that.
change.
It's in red.
So as part of the management on that G, just thinking about the last town warrant where, we had to bundle all those fixes on the article, would it be beneficial to have language that required maintenance plans, being updated to try to forecast and advise like CIP on maintenance schedules, on kind of capital improvement and
Well,
maintenance?
we do have a maintenance schedule now at DPW. So I think, I understand your point, and it's a valid one. I just don't know if it needs to be in the charter, that's all.
Right.
You know what I'll do, because I have Article 6, why did I volunteer for that? Finance and financial procedures, I'll make a note about, you're not only saying we need capital plans, we need maintenance plans.
Yep.
Okay,
And
Just
that's,
so we don't go through what we just went through.
okay.
Right.
Financing,
Okay.
major upgrades.
Section 6.
I agree.
That's what you want to focus on.
I agree.
Explain it.
I agree.
A buddy
Maybe mirror something.
that comes in,
Oh, you mean
We didn't have a good
Mr.
answer.
Dombrowski?
Dabrowski, did not have a good answer for
I'm
it.
surprised he's not here.
I am so calling him and going over this with him.
He's probably watching you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so have we gone through P, or are we still taking letter by letter?
I'm on, I have something on K. Oh, no, I
You're
have
on.
something on J.
To
Jay?
negotiate all contracts involving any subject within the jurisdiction
So the school committee does the school staff,
and takes care of the wages and hours.
but the town manager does the library staff, right? Okay, that was my question. no comment for change.
You mean put library in?
You know how like you have a library, you have the trustees, and they
Yeah.
kind of, they have slightly different powers than what the school committee has, and it's kind of like a hybrid of, different things. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing the library staff in any way. That's covered by the
They're
town
they're
manager.
covered. They're in SEIU
All right.
and in Joan.
And then I have a comment for K. To be chief procurement officer. Okay. Do chief procurement officers have to be certified by the state?
That's a good question. I asked that of Charlie Sumner, my good friend in Brewster, when I was becoming manager. And the answer is, it's either going to be the manager or somebody on staff, and Terry Cook is certified.
So
I'm just telling you
we
what
might
Charlie
want to say something in here.
told me.
Like his
Because the
designee.
state's, the state's definition of a chief procurement officer is a legally binding definition, and you have to be certified.
Right.
I don't know if it's the OG or the AG's office or whatever, but, we should somehow fix that, because there was a situation in Yarmouth where the town administrator didn't go through all that training, but because of the charter, they were the chief procurement officer, so we were like, oh, can he sign this award letter or not? It took us a while to work that out.
I think you'll find that it's either the manager that's got to go through that training that you're referring to, or somebody on staff.
So if we worked in the word, the town manager or his or her designee
Yes.
type of thing, right?
Right.
Something, I mean, you might always want to be the chief procurement officer, because I think that's right, but there has to be somebody on staff that's certified by the town as a
We
chief.
do
Right.
have, Terry is.
Yeah, Terry did that last year, didn't you?
And I just want to make sure that I get to see where the money's being spent, that's all.
Yes, I don't want to take that authority away from you to
And-
sign.
and-
be
And
the-
if you would like, I'll be more than happy to go to the training, but she has gone through it.
Right, okay.
I always like training.
It's not easy. I've avoided it.
Carol, did you have anything in particular on the remaining letters in that
I
section?
did not on that one, no. I did have something on
I-
section 4-3, though.
Well,
I love
let's-
O.
Do you want to?
Hang on, let's,
I love O, to attend all sessions of town meeting and answer all questions raised by voters. So you're Mr. Answer Man at town meeting.
I see, John, do you want to,
Yeah.
want to cut it off there?
no, I'm
Okay.
I'm just asking if anyone had anything else on letters ending in, through P, before we go to 4-3.
So my two things. One, I don't see anything in regard to diversity and equity at all listed as a responsibility. And number two, I don't see anything in regard to environmental justice and listed as a responsibility.
That's great
I think
comment.
those are
Those are
two potential things that should be considered at some future date. Not to add to your job.
Good catch.
Right, and the other thing is climate change.
Well, that's
Environmental.
Environmental, does it?
No, environmental justice has to do with equity for low, moderate income areas in town and minority areas.
Well, I'm.
Oh, we
I'm-
was doing it
I was thinking of it much
environmental.
more
And
broadly.
it's true that there is a link to, there are more impacts, they're predicting there's going to be more impacts of climate change on environmental justice areas. But climate change is like a crisis that is coming to the forefront, and It's a little bit, it is separate.
I don't want to make it too limited. I want to make it very broad.
Okay, so making it broad would be to add and call out climate change specifically. Because
Your first one, Don, was equity, what did you say?
diversity
Diversity
Okay.
and equity, is it D? What is it?
DEIB, diversity, equity,
And inclusion.
belonging.
Okay,
That's the new
Okay.
letter they put on.
and then separately, environmental justice,
Yeah.
and climate change.
and, yeah. However we,
Yeah, well, we can wordsmith it later.
Yeah.
right, the
Right, just
MVP,
do
all
that.
that kind of stuff. but-
Just don't put it in there that I gotta change climate change or I don't get a raise.
Gotta fix it, Rodney.
I know how to structure your raises now.
Put everything on
Put those nice
stilts.
words back together.
All right. 4-3, are we up to there?
Yep.
Okay.
Delegation of authority. For some reason, the way it's worded bothers me. The town manager may authorize any subordinate officer or employee to exercise any power or perform any function or duty which is assigned to the office of the town manager. Provided, however, that all acts performed under any such delegation shall at all times be deemed to be the acts of the town manager.
It's a common language. If I was heading out to a managers meeting and I told my highly regarded administrative secretary, tell so-and-so that I said such and such, and they got to do it,
Okay.
that's communicated by her, but it has the same power as though I said
If you
it.
said it, okay.
And sometimes contracts have to be signed, right? On a week that somebody's taking a vacation. I just, again, the list of subordinate officers, that term officers is bothering me throughout this.
Yeah.
But
and I
I'm
will-
assuming that means like the fire chief and the police chief and
Yes.
not somebody that's an elected board member.
The town officer,
See how it says subordinate officer?
A subordinate officer. It would not mean,
yes, because that says subordinate.
Okay.
Isn't that what you just said?
yes.
I just want to make sure legalese, I mean, I just want to understand it.
Right.
I want to understand it. I mean, there are towns that sometimes have to have somebody on the Select Board Act in extreme situations, but.
No, the key,
They wouldn't be subordinate to the town manager.
Exactly.
The assistant town
Okay.
manager would be the executive assistant to the town manager.
Okay.
Would be
Right.
like, it's the people, like the select, you think of that hierarchy, and that was one comment I had for another section, is like getting a flow chart as an appendix.
That's what
in
I'm
here.
getting at.
we do have one. We
Yeah,
do have
But
one.
maybe it needs to be added to this once we kind of,
But all of the department heads or the assistant manager would be considered a subordinate to the manager.
select board definitely is not subordinate.
But the person that you're describing would not, if you're talking
See how
about.
I'm like trying, I want to get rid of that word officer and just use what you just said right there.
Well, how
But I
about
think
just,
that's
how about
consistent,
just
isn't it, across the
em-
state? So
authorize-
get rid of the word.
authorize
Okay.
any employee?
No, what
I think that gets too.
What Kathy just said is that by striking that word officer, we have to be careful, because it might be a term that is carried throughout all charters throughout the state.
Okay.
So, but anyways, if we could just flag it.
And an officer would be considered under the definition that was given to me earlier that
Right.
I will get to you by council. That is a department head, and I've got to be able to deal with a department head, obviously. And that person would be a subordinate.
Right.
I think, to Mary's point, though, I think it would be good to kind of reference or cite some sort of flow chart. That's, just because, I wouldn't want to see somebody from, the police being authorized to make decisions on something that's totally irrelevant to police, you know,
Right.
if you weren't there and somebody else was making decisions, you know, it should kind of be relative to their area of expertise, you know, and not just broadly any, you know, you could take somebody, anyone from anywhere.
Plus, in 10 years, it'll help alleviate a lot of
Well,
this
it does
debate
say, it does
when
kind of,
gets
it says,
revisited.
shall at all times be deemed to be the acts of the town performed. It says, however, that all the acts performed under shall be at all times be deemed the acts of the town manager. So a police officer would not normally have that authority
But if
of the town manager.
Yeah, but there's
delegated the
nothing in that
authority-
paragraph that prevents it.
If it's delegated the authority, then yeah, you could have that. But that's kind of my point.
Backing up for a second to the definition you have, maybe in our definition section, we add who's subordinate.
Subordinates.
We put who is subordinate to the town manager under,
Under
whatever that
definitions,
under
yeah.
town officer as opposed to elected town officer. That'll help maybe alleviate some of that confusion on those two terms, because I know that was something we discussed too.
Yeah,
But
I
if you
would-
have that definition of who's, the town officers are the ones subordinate to the town manager as it reads here.
Here,
Maybe in that definition, because we define town officer first, then we say,
Yep.
you know, then it's clear, it's more clear.
And all I'm
And
referring
I-
to are the department heads, the assistant department heads, and the employees under that department head.
Which is what it reads, but maybe just putting that extra, who
Yep.
are subordinate to the town manager, so that it's all clear.
So, but to David's point, you're saying that delegation should be powers that fall, that are associated with those positions.
I mean, I would prefer just kind of, you know, where their area of expertise lies, you know, it's not outside of their area of expertise. It just would be comforting, you know, in following some sort of flow chart that matches the organizational structure of the town.
Yeah, and we do have a flow chart.
But
Ta-da.
kind of citing it and referencing it.
It's all on one page.
Yep,
Oh, no,
Is that in the administrative code?
Yeah.
yes.
That's in the administrative code. But I see what you're saying, David. You're kind of saying that we might need something that possibly limits that delegation to a person where that duty falls under their expertise.
expertise, right.
Yep.
Okay. Did you catch that, John? For section 4.3, possible language to limit that delegation to a subordinate officer or employee in their area of expertise only.
In addition to
And I don't know if
clarifying the
limit
definition
is the best word.
section.
I don't know, is limit the best word, or is,
Well,
it's-
we can go back and clean it up.
wordsmith that?
Oh, yeah, no,
Because you'll
that's
think about
not,
it.
that's not
No?
To a person that's competent and suitable for the
in that task or duty.
task, yeah.
Think of the time.
I have the good fortune now of having Stephanie's eyes and ears on this too, so
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. We all thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well,
4-4.
Yes.
The clerk
Most of
does.
all.
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Are we now at the acting town manager?
Yes.
Yes.
I was.
Okay.
Yes, you-
I think it is a good time to stop.
okay.
Yeah, because we could do that, because we do have a couple other housekeeping things to deal with, so I agree with that.
Okay.
So can you hold your motion
I can.
momentarily? All right, so we'll pick it up at 4.
But we are at section 4-4, correct?
Yes.
So there's nothing else? Okay.
Okay, so about a summer schedule. So I sent an email around a week or so ago, taking into, for Mondays, taking into account the select board meetings and and holidays. There are 4 dates between beginning of July and mid-September on Mondays. July 10th, July 31st, August 14th, and September 18th. We don't have to schedule all of them now, but at least our next meeting, and I think we talked last time about the 10th being agreeable.
Yeah, July 10th.
I'm good with all four
Everyone.
dates. I'm good with all 4 dates.
Okay,
Me too.
I will not be here in August, Mr. Chairman, and maybe not September.
okay.
Can you just repeat the days again?
July 10th,
Yeah.
July 31st, August 14th, and September 18th.
Now, that doesn't preclude, we might want to find another date or two between now and mid-September.
I think you're pushing it in the summer months. I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but,
Yeah, I'm just saying it doesn't preclude it, and if we feel the need for it.
and it's going to be difficult, I'll speak for Stephanie for a second, to roll these minutes out within 1 week, so I'm glad that we're not doing
Yeah,
that anymore.
me too. Yeah, I get that.
So Greg, are you going to be able to call in?
The one on the 14th I will, the one on the 18th I'll be overseas.
They don't have phones over there?
Can I build a town for the long distance?
We could meet in a different.
That's when you get a Google Voice number, just use the internet.
Avoid it.
You just use the internet.
We could meet at 4 in the morning if that's more convenient to your schedule.
Oh, 4 in the morning works.
Just kidding.
Did you, you made a motion to adjourn?
All right, so
Do you have anything
we're
else?
okay with those 4 dates
Yep.
that we just.
And we're maintaining the 6:30 start time, correct?
Okay, any additional topics, not only that I haven't contemplated, but that you have? Hearing none, how about a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Oh, echo chamber. So, thank you to all of you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Pardon the absence of discussion.